In September 2025, Nepal witnessed unprecedented youth-led protests that would shake the foundations of its democracy. What began as opposition to social media bans quickly escalated into something far more significant. Generation Z had found their voice and they were demanding to be heard. This is the story of the Gen Z protests that changed Nepal forever. Using authentic footage and real voices from the streets of Nepal, we present a balanced account of the events that shook the nation, and examine their lasting implications for Nepal's democracy and governance. The scale of the Gen Z protests was unprecedented in Nepal's recent history. Tens of thousands of young Nepalese took to the streets across multiple cities. Students, young professionals, and activists joined forces in an unprecedented show of unity. Their message was clear: corruption and nepotism had to end. From Kathmandu to Pokhara, the movement spread rapidly across the nation. What began as peaceful demonstrations would soon take a dramatic turn. The protesters' demands centered on transparency, accountability, and an end to political nepotism. As the crowds grew larger, their target became clear: the seat of Nepal's government. This generation refused to accept the status quo that had defined Nepal's politics for decades. The government's response was swift, and many would argue, excessive. Police deployed tear gas, water cannons, and rubber bullets against the demonstrators. But the most shocking revelation would come later. Human Rights Watch later confirmed that police had used live ammunition against protesters. At least 19 protesters lost their lives, with over 300 injured. The streets of Kathmandu became a battleground between Nepal's youth and its security forces. Emergency services struggled to cope with the casualties. The images of violence shocked the nation and the international community. The government declared curfews and deployed the army to restore order. But the damage to Nepal's democratic reputation had already been done. International media and human rights organizations condemned the government's violent crackdown. The protests left visible scars on Nepal's most important government institutions. Singha Durbar, the seat of Nepal's government, bore the brunt of the protesters' anger. The Supreme Court, symbol of Nepal's justice system, was also targeted. Windows were shattered, walls were vandalized, and security barriers were destroyed. Government vehicles were set ablaze, and public property suffered extensive damage. The cleanup would take weeks, but the political damage would last much longer. The messages left behind told the story of a generation's frustration. The physical damage was extensive, but it paled in comparison to the damage to public trust.
We are not violent people, but we cannot stay silent when our future is being stolen by corrupt politicians and their children.
This is about our generation's right to a fair chance in life, not just watching Nepo kids get everything handed to them.
Every day we see corruption in the news, but nothing changes. We had to take to the streets because our voices weren't being heard.
We want transparency, we want accountability, and we want a government that works for all Nepalese, not just the connected few.
They shot at us with real bullets. We were peaceful, we were just asking for our rights, and they tried to kill us.
We never wanted violence. We wanted dialogue. We wanted change. But the government chose to respond with bullets instead of words.
I was hit by a rubber bullet, but I don't regret being there. Someone has to stand up for Nepal's future.
Despite the violence, the protesters' resolve remained unbroken. The protests achieved immediate political results that few had expected. Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli resigned and the social media ban was lifted within days. But the deeper questions about Nepal's democracy remained unanswered. Political analysts warned that the underlying issues of corruption and nepotism still needed to be addressed. The protests had exposed fundamental weaknesses in Nepal's democratic institutions. While buildings could be repaired, rebuilding trust between the government and its people would take much longer. Nepal's youth had proven they could mobilize for change, but sustainable reform would require sustained effort. The cost of change had been measured in young lives lost and dreams deferred. As Nepal moves forward, the Gen Z protests will be remembered as a turning point, a moment when a generation refused to accept the status quo and demanded a better future for their nation. The question remains, will their sacrifice lead to the transparent, accountable governance they died fighting for?